Let's just go over a few things, and I woke up this morning with a regesh that it's. I'm just sharing it because it's on my mind, but I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for the fact that everybody indulges me and listens to me about all these random things that we're talking about.
That's what we come for.
I'm just telling you, I appreciate it. I do.
Do it every day.
Yeah.
We read the sefer ourselves.
You read the book yourself, right. No, because you're saying we're at Shiur 177 on a few prakim of Nefesh Hachaim. Obviously, there's a lot of tangents here. But I think the tangents are what I have to offer here are the tangents, and hope I'm right. But let me take the. First of all, we're talking about the hiskashrus. What we've learned so far is that in the makeup of the existential makeup of the human being, there's the nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, we can grasp a little bit. We know what our nefesh is. We know what our goof is. You can go to the doctor, get an x-ray. You know what your goof is. You go to find out what your nefesh is, but meaning like what makes you tick, literally, which is a fascinating thing. Like what's the life force that's making my heart beat? That has to do with nefesh. And then ruach, as you go higher, it gets a little bit more complicated because ruach is always associated with dibur. But it's easier which is true. Ruach is dibur. The Targum is guilty of doing this because he says ruach memalala, But it's easier for me to understand it, which is not a contradiction, as the ability to breathe. Ruach. So you gotta have the nefesh, the ruach, breathing. You know, if you can't breathe, you can't live. It's vital, no? Like you can't. You find even people that can breathe without a heartbeat, that can live without a pulse for a little bit of time, but not without breathing. The neshama is harder to understand because that's where it already is connecting into a higher world, and scientists don't want to even acknowledge the neshama. And even outside of that is the chaya, the actual life force, which is even outside of me, and yechida, which is specifically, to put it into Kabbalistic terms, is that the Or Hashem, the kav of the Or Hashem, reaches this world, and it's a big Or, but the focus, like a magnifying glass, focuses into yechida. That's what the word yechida means. Brings it into yachad. Brings it into yachad, and the yachad is my specific Or Hashem, which is why my yechidiyut is so important. I just want to. This sounds like a really big tangent, and I'm going to get to what I want to get to in a minute, but I just want to give a mashal, which you'll see is not such a big tangent. Al pi halacha, and I've discussed this briefly, but I want to go a little bit more biyun on this, and maybe you'll appreciate it, particularly if you have a medical background or a scientific background, which I don't. In the world of halacha, there's a big sugya of establishing death or life, which is obviously a religious question. You know, if you're religious, it's a religious question. Tremendous nafkamina, like if somebody's dead or alive, huge nafkamina. Can you bury them?
Take an organ. Can you take an organ out of them?
Take an organ out of them. Can you remove a respirator if a person's dead? So, al pi halacha, it's very clear that life is established, life is defined by the ability to breathe. Ruach, nefesh, ruach, neshama. Where is the definition of life? Not in the nefesh and not in the neshama. Neshama remains. Neshama doesn't die. Nefesh is the nefesh. The nefesh is my biology, let's say, and my psychology. That can all die. I can be brain dead. But ruach is the halachic definition, ad kedei kach, that the Shulchan Aruch says if you want to know somebody's alive or dead, primitive, you take a feather and you hold it by the person's nose, and you see whether the feather moves or the feather doesn't move. So you see the definition of life is in ruach, not in nefesh, not in neshama, not brain death, not heartbeat, not the ability to think, nothing like that. It's just, am I breathing? Is the person breathing or is the person not breathing? This is the question. This is the question, is breathing or not breathing? If he's breathing, he's alive, doesn't make a difference what else is going on. If he's not breathing, he's dead. That's how you define it. This is as true 2,000 years ago as it is today, al pi halacha. And unfortunately, for some reason, the last few weeks, I've been dealing with this question on a very practical level almost once a week. Somehow or another, I became a number to call. So on this particular issue, and the way this question manifests itself, biyamim ha'ela, is usually in removing a respirator. And the reason why that's the issue is because clearly, even if a person's breathing, al pi halacha, just while I'm here, talk about tangents, it's probably incorrect, probably usser, to do heroics. So people say you got to do everything you can to keep the person alive. Lo barurli, because if a person is a goses, lo yaleinu, right now, if a person is a goses, meaning that they cannot live 24 hours on their own, that's the definition of a goses according to the Shaar. If a person is a goses, you're not allowed to even touch that person. The Ramah brings doima l'ner. It's like a flickering light. You're not allowed to even touch a person, so certainly you're not allowed to do an operation on the person. So a ghost is a ghost, so it's questionable to me whether it's even a chumrah. It might be an avera to start doing heroics, meaning to put in a respirator, put in a stent, put in all these kind of things that they a peg, put in all these kind of things that they want to put in. So Rav Moshe Feinstein says very clearly that at all times, even for a ghost, you have to always offer the big three. The big three is nutrition. You have to offer air on some level, and you have to offer blood. Meaning, if a person's hemorrhaging, you have to stop the blood. Person can't breathe, you give him an oxygen mask. But that's without doing heroics of an actual invasive procedure of putting in a. So I just want to tell you something. First, like a very deep lesson and a good mashal for the Nefesh Hachaim. Ruach. We're talking about ruach here. The Shulchan Aruch says that death has to do with breathing. Rav Tendler Shalita, who was my colleague in Monsey, even though he's old enough to be my father, son-in-law of Rav Moshe Feinstein, so is quoted as saying that no, the definition of death is brain death. And of course, because this was quoted in his name, who said it yet in the name of Rav Moshe, so he became pasal l'chol davar in a large part of the Haredi world. It became like brain death. What's brain death? This is nothing according to halacha. How could he even say it and say it b'shem Rav Moshe? So something interesting. First of all, the importance of being intelligent. And second of all, the importance of understanding the inyanim. I actually had the opportunity to listen to the Shiur recently of Rav Tendler on the subject. Nobody bothers listening to it because he's just wrong, right? I actually listened to the Shiur. He so completely didn't say what everybody says that he said. Just like an interesting thing. What he says is as follows: is so important it's important l'maaseh, it's important al pi halacha, and important in dadlik havschus. What he says is as follows: he says obviously and clearly the only definition of life and death is breathing. It says in Shulchan Aruch. There's no question about it. The question was if a person's on a respirator and he's not breathing completely on his own. Or so is he breathing or is he not breathing? That's the question. Now, this is not such a big question, you pointed out, because there's a little meter. Anybody who's had the great schus of seeing a respirator in action knows that there's a little meter, forgot what it's called, on the respirator, which tells you how much of the breath is coming from the person and how much of the breath is coming from the machine. What's this called, do you know? There's a little meter. Every single respirator has one. This is not high tech. You don't have to have an Israeli startup for this. It's called an MID or something. It's some kind of Rosh Hashanah. It's something very crude, like it might be even an IHB, like is he breathing, like some kind of it's something like that. But anyways, there's a meter. So the meter says 1, 2, 3. Bezos Hashem. If anybody here would be on this meter, we're fully breathing on our own. So you don't. It's telling you how much the mix of oxygen and telling you how much you need for the machine, so you can really tell if a person is breathing based on this meter. You can tell if they're breathing, or is it a machine that's breathing for him? Yes, that's clear. But he says, Rabbi Tadler, it's not 100% more, because it's scientifically it's not 100% clear the number and how much, and sometimes it's in a grayscale. It's not clear. So he said that today you can do tests on the brainstem, on the modula of the brainstem, which is the part of the brain which controls all the survival parts of the person, including breathing. And you could test if the modula is alive or dead. It's impossible for a person to be breathing on their own with a dead modula. It's impossible. Modula is modula, but a modula, M-O-D-U-L-A. This is the part of the brain which controls the breathing. So, if he said to Rav Moshe Feinstein, his father-in-law, that if it's very, very clear, this can be tested clearly, that the modula has no brain waves at all. The brain cell is nothing. It's dead. So it's impossible. Here you have, combined with the meter, which says that there's no independent breathing, you want to do a double bedika would be to check this meter, which is your feather, or I have better feather, which is checking the brain waves of the modula with high-tech possibilities. And the technology is such that now today you can establish 100% whether a person is breathing or not breathing. It has absolutely nothing to do with how he's quoted. I just want to bring that up. It has nothing to do with how he's quoted. It has nothing to do, it doesn't say brain death is death. He's 100% consistent with Shulchan Aruch. Can you argue with this? Maybe you can argue with it. I'm going to argue with it. But the first thing is that what he's saying is not just logical, but it's actually goinus. What he's saying, he's just saying, use the technology to as what the Shulchan Aruch had nothing better than a feather. Today you have a $4 million machine, which is a big feather. It's a very good feather. Use the technology. So you can get, first of all, into a question of, does technology replace the traditional way of checking things? Maybe that's a question. And then there's another question. As far as technology replacing the way we do things, I just want to point out to you as a mushal, this is a real madrega, because now I have a tangent to the tangent, tangential tangent. But something very interesting in Hilchos Nida. In Hilchos Nida, there's a halachas like this. In Shulchan Aruch, it says very clear that Nida is the issue. The tumah of Nida is scientifically the breakdown of the endometrium within a woman. Every month, the endometrium, the lining, the wall of the uterus breaks down to make a new wall of uterus so you can have a child. That's the purpose of having it. You're no longer childbearing. There's no more nida because there's no more endometrium, no more breakdown of the endometrium. The whole process does take place. Sorry, Meinu, Hechzer Ladam Nida was a big simcha. It means her body's working again, right? She became Pearson Nida. Now, the halacha is that if you see dam, if a woman sees dam, only two people see dam, women and rabbis. So if a woman sees dam, so you have to ask, you have to ask only one question, Al Pi halacha. Is it dam rechem or is it not dam rechem? Is it coming from the uterus or is it not coming from the uterus? If it's coming from the cervical canal or the cervix, from the prosdor, as it's called in halacha, so then it's probably not nida, unless there's all kinds of conditions. I'm not teaching Hilchos Nida now. But once it's coming from the rechem, this is the point I want to make. Once it's uteral bleeding, it's dam nida and finished. Who knows how to be mechalik anymore? Now there are altogether 72 types of things that you can see on a batika cloth. 72. So I mean, it could be anything, but being that we don't know exactly what it is, once it's dam rechem, we assume, al pi chazaka, that it's dam nida. Yeah, you with me? In other words, who could check? Comes from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and he says, of course you could check. Today you have scopes to check. So let's say a woman has a fibroid, an in utero fibroid, which is causing bleeding. Nothing to do with nida at all. Zero to do with nida. It's just like you have a fibroid here, you have just some kind of an irritation. So it's clearly dam petza, dam maka. So it comes from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he says that you could have a situation of 100% dam rechem, uteral bleeding, which is 100% mutter. You don't go to mikveh for nothing. You don't have to do anything for it because it's uteral dam. I never saw any posek that argues with it, but this was his chiddush of how technology solved a problem that halacha was not able to solve. There was no way to check this. There weren't the instruments to check this even 100 years ago, apparently, to check what is causing actually a bleeding. So he says, once you know it's a fibroid, it's not exeris because of the dam rechev is usher. It's just the dam rechev. We don't know, but if you do know, so then that's the halacha. So there are many cases.
Is that included in the 72?
It's one of the 72 for sure. And there's all kinds of, by the way, possibilities of petza. So if a person, for instance, a woman came to me a couple of weeks ago. She's been a nida for 7 years. 7 years, a young woman. So, like, what's a nida? Her rabbi said that she's a nida. It's dam rechev. It's a nida. The doctor says dam rechev. It's a nida. So just to put 7 years, 7 years. So I sent her to a particular doctor that I recommended. And there's a fibroid, it's a simple thing. It's a fibroid. So she's a nida for nothing for 7 years. I'm just saying, a nida for nothing for 7 years. And you understand the shalom bayis, everything. It was a gefährlich. So, but on the other hand, like this is what her Rav knows one thing. It says in Shulchan Aruch. So I didn't even ask who the Rav was. I said, look, you have a rabbi. I don't want to paskin, and I actually WhatsApped the psak of Reb Shlomo Zalman, and I said, it's a davar pashut, it's a davar bora that she's never been a nida at all. I mean, maybe she was a nida between, but she's never been a nida at all. So she called me back. So the Rav said that, well, okay, well, if there's one shita like that, you can be makeless. Okay, completely missed the point. But okay, as long as she's mutter, but what I'm trying to say is that, like, to know the pnimius advarim is the difference between an amaretz and a talmid chacham. That's all I'm saying. It's important. One of the things you have to do, talmid chacham, and it has to poisik. If you're pasuk, you have to do two things. You have to know the halacha. You have to know the metzias. And there's many people that know the metzias that don't know the halacha and they're paskening, and there are many people who know the halacha that don't know the Metzias and they're paskening. And there are those that don't know not the halacha, not the Metzias, they're also paskening. You have all kinds of poskim in this world of ours. But okay, let me go nachzor in yonenu, away from technology here for a second. I was just thinking like this. Let's paskin for a moment in theory al pi Nefesh Hachaim on brain death. On Rav Tendler's brain death of the modula of the brain which doesn't allow the person to breathe. So it's a very interesting thing because if Misa is in the Ruach, not in the Nefesh, so you're paskening by some aspect of the Nefesh, whether there's Ruach or not. You could, like, l'chayr, there's still makom to be choker philosophically, at least, that if the brain is telling you that no, he couldn't be breathing, but you're being bodeg. It's not just you have a different feather, because it's not a feather. You're going deeper and saying we can tell by the nefesh whether there's any ruach. Okay, psikresha. It's exactly psikresha. Exactly psikresha. So there are at least just it helps us as a mashal to understand when we talk about misa, or more important, when we talk about chayim. We're talking about ruach. Now, can you determine, this is the question, I'm not posing this question, I'm just saying, the question is, can you determine by something outside of the ruach, a din of the ruach? So like Rabbi Yitzchak says, well, psikresha lo yamos, there's a din of psikresha, that if you disconnect, So once you disconnect the nefesh from the ruach, psik reisha, la yamos, how could it be? It's a bit. How could it be that he's not dead? But again, that you're talking about life and death. It's possible that even one step you can't take. In other words, psik reisha la yamos is still a cause and effect. It's not the thing itself. It's not misa itself. It's just a way that we can assume somebody's dead. So the question is, when it comes to life and death, can you go with any assumptions at all? That's the question as I see it. But the point I wanted to make is that I'll be svara, I'm just using this as a bushel to understand the hiskashrus of nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, like how delicate this issue is. Did you want to say something?
Earlier, you covered it.
I covered it. Okay. What do you say, Shmuel? Covered it.
There's a whole
No, I wanted to say that that if there's no nefesh, right? If you go and there's no nefesh, obviously there's no ruach, so that would prove that the person's dead. But if there is still a little bit of nefesh, that doesn't mean that there's still ruach. Right. So if the halacha is based upon the ruach,
Also
I
true.
can see the argument like that's the ruach.
Also, that doesn't reverse.
The didn't go to that extra
It
step.
doesn't
So the
reverse.
question is, if you're going to go that far,
Okay. So
Now,
he's taking
you'll
two
know-
things. He's taking two things. He's taking the meter on the respirator,
right?
and the nefesh. He's measuring the nefesh and the ruach as a double precaution.
So, I'm saying it as a general thing. So, if let's say you have this halachic question, and you go and the doctor says, "Yeah, there's no nefesh." He's a Talmud Chacham. He's a doctor. He's a brain surgeon. There's no nefesh. So then you know. But if there's nefesh, where before 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would have pulled the plug because you're looking at the ruach, but now you see there's a little bit of nefesh. Have you created a halachic problem for yourself?
Yeah, but that's not what happens. That's not what happens. What happens is the doctors say, "Look, he's brain dead, and there's no quality of life here. So pull the plug," as you say. They don't say pull the plug anymore because it's all digital. It's much more
Shut down.
it's much more sanitary because you can do it from your iPhone.
the whole recent history of near-death experiences where people have been totally without any vitals.
What is that? That's like a lack of nefesh. In other words, what happens there is, when they're saying that they had a death experience, what they mean is the nefesh closed down, the ruach was still working.
No. In some cases, there are no vital signs whatsoever, no breathing,
And they
no
come
brain
back.
activity, and they come back.
Okay,
That's amazing.
And they come back and become, perfectly.
if it's true, and they saw light.
And Chazal have such experiences also, tell about such experiences also.
Yeah.
So does that have
Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi.
implications?
Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi probably does. Like, what does that do? But the point is, he didn't really die. Maybe they just measured the breathing wrong.
No. I saw recently a story. Someone who was, in the ER, and his friend in the Hatzalah worker brought him to the ER and tried desperately to save him, and the doctor said, no, there are no signs whatsoever that he's ever going to live again. He's been
And he was enlivened.
And pardon?
And he became alive.
And so his friend was makabel on himself to stop talking during davening. And he went to Beis Shomala, and they told him, you've never davened as a tefillah in your life because you always talk during davening. And if you'll makabel on yourself not to stop talking during davening, and he was.
Okay.
And he came back.
Good story.
And the doctor said medically there is just simply no explanation for this.
I don't know the halachic ramifications of it. I've never seen it.
Did you read the thing that I said? Rabbi Law, he talks about, it's a kind of a far-fetched way to get there, but he's talking about the halachic status of the inheritance, if that happens. And if so, that can be considered Tadiyas Amesim. He doesn't go as far as about.
Yeah.
That considered Tadiyas Amesim, and is the person the same person? And what defines that?
You're still married.
Yeah. Or am I married to 4 wives now? Right here? Look, okay, so all these sugyas, I'm with you. All these sugyas are good examples. I'm just giving you a sugya of Rabbi Tendler, which is a Maisa B'chol Yoim in every hospital. This is a Maisa B'chol Yoim, and it's a very important question, and how to deal with it. And I definitely have been, what I have seen with my own eyes is people who were brain death and came back to life and were even able to talk again. That I have seen with my own
They were
eyes.
breathing.
Yeah. Okay, so they were breathing. They were breathing. Now let's get back to the Indian over here. The Gemara in Brachos Lamed Hey. We said, without going through the whole Gemara again, there seems to be three shitas in the Gemara. The Gemara says that Asur lanish min olam hazeh b'lo bracha. You're not allowed to have hana from this world without a bracha. Sha'akol niyeh b'dvarei, or as I said, sha'akol barei l'chvodei, that you make it a chuppah. Everything has a bracha. Sha'chiyanu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu l'azman. Everything has a bracha of some sort. The famous Reb Chaim Brisker, where he wants to know if birchas haTorah is birchas hamitzvahs, and as the halachas of birchas hamitzvahs, and he says that it's birchas hanahanan. Birchas hanahanan. It's a type of hana. Learning Torah is a type of hana. So this is Reb Chaim Brisker. So there seems to be three shitas in the Gemara. Kol anena min olam hazeh b'lo bracha. The first shita is kilu ma'al. He does an act of me'ilah. The second shita is Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav kilu nena mikadshei shamayim. It's all in the Gemara. And then the third shita in the Gemara, which I asked, is the same thing. You're ma'al and kadshei shamayim, so it's hainohach. And then the third shita is kilu goizel me'akadosh baruch hu knesses Yisrael. You're stealing from the shechita. So is it me'ilah? Is it nena mehektish? Or is it gzeila mekadshish Kodesh Baruch Hu v'Knesses Yisrael, which means the Shechina. Whatever that means. That's the most esoteric of them all. How do you steal something from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What does it even mean to steal something from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So the thing is like this, that the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, so this is what I started talking about. That Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim. It's a Mishnah. Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim. Whatever you do should be L'Shem Shamayim. Means you eat, it should be L'Shem Shamayim. You walk, it should be L'Shem Shamayim. You talk, it should be L'Shem Shamayim. Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim. What does it mean on a deep level? That Kol Maasecha is in the world of Asiyah. Yihu L'Shem Shamayim should be connected, that's the Iskashris, to the Shamayim. So your world of Asiyah should be connected to the world of Yitzirah, to the world of Bria, to the world of, all the way up to Yechai Yechida, which is Shamayim. That's called Shamayim. How do I know it's called Shamayim? Because Hazinu HaShamayim, Rashi says Neshama. It's the same gematria as Neshama, HaShamayim. So the Kol B'Asech Yihu L'Shem Shamayim is not just like do things with the right intent, but even if you do an Aveira, it should be L'Shem Shamayim. It should be Aveira L'Shma. Meaning, like sometimes a person has to be Koes, maybe. So if you get angry, but it has to be L'Shem Shamayim. But that keeps us honest and keeps us sober, L'Shem Shamayim. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, so he says that the Rambam's interesting because the Rambam says Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim U'B'chol Drachecha De'ehu. So the Rambam brings in another piece over here, which the pashut way to learn it is B'chol Drachecha De'ehu. B'chol Drachecha De'ehu. Everything you do, you should know Hashem. So it's a like Pirush, like in other words, like the Rabbah bringing a raya from a pasuk, right? Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim. Shneimar, it says in the Mishnah, Shneimar B'chol Drachecha. Huh?
It's Mishnah.
In Mishnah, yeah, that's a pasuk in Mishnah. But the Rabbah brings us in. We already know Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim. So what's B'chol Drachecha De'ehu? So the Lubavitcher Rebbe says it's two different things. Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim and B'chol Drachecha De'ehu is two different things. I'll just read you. Kol Maasecha Yihu L'Shem Shamayim. This is on the Mishnah, but it's not on the Mishnah. This is a nice sefer, by the way. It's Shiurim L'Pirkei Avos, which is a likut of all the sichos, which are a lot, on Pirkei Avos. Today you can read the Lubavitcher Rebbe on everything. He divided it all up into everything. He spoke about it. The man thought and talked about everything. It's like amazing. Every part of Torah. There's nothing in Nigla or Lister that he didn't talk about. But he says as follows: Abafarshim kashvu, the Mefarshim say, brings even the Ovis to Rav Nosson, Shmoyna Prokem La Rambam, like Parakeh in the Meiri, Kasvu Shezeu Avoda B'chol Drachecha De'eh. When we say V'chol Ma'asecha Yehil L'Shem Shemayim, that's the Avoda of B'chol Drachecha De'eh. In other words, we have a Mishnah, we have a Pasuk. Abnam B'Protius Yoser Heb Shnei Rafani Avoda. He says, but the truth is that if you think about it, they're two different things. What are the two different things? Chol Ma'asecha Yehil L'Shem Shemayim. L'shem Shomayim. It's a strange lashon now. L'shem Shomayim. For the name of heaven. What that means is Sha'achilas ha'adam, for instance, Adarach Mashal, Sha'achilas ha'adam, when a person eats, L'shem Shomayim. Meaning, I'm eating so that I can learn. I'm eating so that I can do mitzvahs. I'm eating so that I can be healthy and do more things. That's L'shem Shomayim. Don't just eat. If you just eat, so then you're eating l'shma. You have to eat l'shem something. L'shem something. So what should be l'shem? I'm eating because, it's an interesting thing, like anybody asks themselves, like, why am I eating? I'm eating. I need to have a hesper, yeah. Either eating, I'm eating l'shma. I'm just eating because I want to eat. But no, kol masecha yeh l'shem shemayim. But he says, but it's important to remember that the achila itself is a davar chol. It's what the eating is mundane. The eating is secular, but I'm being mekadosh in the sense that I'm eating for a higher purpose. That's l'shem shemayim. Like mitzvah. Ilu, however, b'chol drachecha de'ehu. When we say b'chol drachecha de'ehu, he, that is, Shidi Asayas Hashem, he, Ba'achila Atzma. It's not that I'm eating, which is mundane or secular, and I'm doing it for a higher purpose. The eating itself has Kedusha. B'hinasas B'dugma, for instance, Achila Shabbos. So the Achila Shabbos is not I'm eating to keep Shabbos. Achila Shabbos is a mitzvah. Achilas Kodshim. Achilas Sudas mitzvah. Heim Asma mitzvah. That in itself is a mitzvah. So there's really two dinim here, which is gewaldig to think about. There's really two dinim. One is when I'm doing something for a higher purpose, and the other is this gufa is the higher purpose. This is the thing. This is the avodah. It's a bit of chasidus, you see, because this is the side of why rabbis give shirayim. It's a din of kachim gufa. It's not that I'm eating here l'shem shemayim. And probably what the Gemara means when the Gemara says kol anena misudas talmud chacham v'chulu. A sudas talmud chacham means that the talmud chacham, if it's assuming the rabbi is a talmud chacham, that the talmud chacham is gufa mekadesh the achila itself. Hence the rabbi is giving out the shirayim. I'm not recommending that we do this at home. I'm just saying that that's the nakuda of it, that he gufa kodesh.
Is this Captain Gabra?
Well, that's where I'm going. It depends how much you feel that God is everywhere and everything. Do you understand the world, he says, as something which is energized or empowered by Hashem? In other words, this is something that Hashem did. We're in this world, we're in it together. But if you get to a different madrega of Ein Oid Milvadoi, Sha'olam Hu Ayin ve'efes l'gabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu ve'ein oid nikra afilu b'shem oid. Ein oid. There is no other oid. There is no oid except for Hashem. So in other words, it's not that I'm doing this for Hashem or lahabdo for the company. This is the company. This is what we're doing. It's a gewaldike lumdus, and it's going to get me to understand the Gemara a little bit better. But I'll give you like Mamash's parsha last week's parsha and Truma and upcoming parsha of Shkolim. Vayichu li Truma. This is very interesting. Vayichu li Truma. Daber el b'nei Yisrael. Vayichu li Truma. Mashmiim al Shkolim. Rashi says li lishmi. Mechatesa, like the Torah says li, and Rashi says lishmi. So what's we have to ask ourselves the difference between li and lishmi. It says in the parsha by the Mishkan, it says 13 times the word li. Chazal point out. B'chahanoi li. What's li and what's lishmi?
Would Rashi say all of those are lishmi, or just the one that he said?
That one.
Just that one. The
Yeah,
other
he says
ones
it.
are
He says
not.
it. He says it 3 times. Lishmi, but not by all of them. Thank you for pointing that out. The difference between li and lishmi is this. I'm going to be Bagala's side here. The difference between li and lishmi is that when we say a shame, when we talk about lishmi means in the name of, or for the name of, in the name of, to the name of, whatever you want. Shame. The Shaar says the word shame. What is a shame? So the Shechina is the shame. When we talk about the shame of, when we talk about the shame of a person, my name is Yaakov Hai. I'm giving you a way to identify me. Is it my essence? Oh, shekeno shalom. I could have an essence without a name. I could have a name without an essence. That's not necessarily my essence. It's supposed to be. This is the Ruach HaKodesh of the Bris. But is my name, my name is John. Is that my essence, or is it not my essence? It's my name. So when we talk about a name, we're talking about outside of the essence of whatever it is we're talking about. In terms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we say like this, L'shem yichud kutsha brichu u'shechinte. Two zachen here, right? There's 2 things. L'shem yichud, we want to make an achdus between kutsha brichu, atzmius Hashem, u'shechinte, and that which is His shame. How do we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu? We don't grasp His essence. We don't grasp His essence. So most we could grasp is the Shem Hashem. Wow, Elokim, we could see Midas Hadin. We could see Midas Harachamim. We could see the Shemas are different, but like we say in Adam Zmiris, right? It's we could see His Shemais or His Midas, but we can't see Him, right? You can't see Him. Even Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas Kisisa, he says, Hareini na es kvaydcha. What does Hashem tell him? I can't tell you. What? Right, you can't see me and live. But I'll tell you my name. Hashem, Kel, Rachum, Chaim, Chabayim, Rav Chesed V'Yemes. You can see my midos. You can see my midos. Heraloi, Kesher, Tefillin, Shorosh. He showed him the Kesher, Tefillin, Shorosh. Stop something to be mine into. You could do this for homework, but it says Bisate v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu b'talus k'shliach tzibur. Hashem put the talus over his head kiviyachol, and he showed Moshe Rabbeinu the Kesher Shel Tefillin. Isn't that a contradiction? Mm-hmm. So there's a big side in that also. You take off the talus, the satef, he put on the talus, and he showed it. But the thing with it is that Hashem was Megala to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Shemois of Hashem. Shem is something. Shmi Hashem, v'eirel el avos, u'shmi Hashem loy nodatu. I didn't even ask them, they didn't even ask me the Shem. So the Shem is the Shechina, you understand this? The Shem is the Shechina, and then there's a Kutshabrichu that's the Atzmius. So comes the Zayar and says that, you know what Li means? The Atzmius of Hashem. You know what Lishmi means? The Shechina of Hashem. So Zayar. Vayichu li truma. Say this over on Parsha Shkolim. Vayichu li truma. Take a piece of myself. That's the Atzmius of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're talking about money, shekels. Vayichu li truma. Lishmi means take it for me. Vayichu li means take me. Vayikuli Lishmi comes Rashi and he says, take it for me. Why did he change it from li to Lishmi? So Chazal explained, because if it says li, it'll never be charav. But if it says lishmi, it can be charav. In other words, there is such a thing as the siluk hashchina that can go away. But what's li mamish is never going to go away. So something which is, so this is talking about, the Chazal say in the Medrash, right, ala makom and kisisa, that the li is for Yemais HaMashiach, because that Beis HaMikdash will never go away. That's a Mikdash Elamim. And the lishmi is talking about the Mishkan and the Bayis Rishon and the Bayis Sheni, which will go away. Dvarim Amokim. So the difference between li and lishmi is the difference in the etzem zach, or is it laman, that thing? So Rashi lowers the bar, lowers the volume a little bit, and says, li, do it lishmi. And where's the Mishkan? Lishmi. It should be l'chol hapachas lishma. This is the same chiluk as kol masecha yil l'shem shemayim and chol drachecha de'ehu. It's the same distinction. It's a distinction between li and lishmi. Two parts, two types of avodas Hashem. Very interesting. Somebody, there's a minhag to say a pasuk that represents your name at the end of Shemona Esrei. So a young girl asked me last week, a teenager, girls are into this, say their name. So she said, what's the reason to say your name at the end of Shemona Esrei? Because it says that, as everybody knows, that Shaar doesn't bring this buchal. It doesn't bring this whole thing. You should say your name. But the Chavetz Chaim brings it in Shmir Zalash and Kehillat Bais Parak Zayin. He brings this thing that you should say your name. Brings it from the Shalah Kadosh. So what it says there is that you're going to come to the Yom Hadin, and you're going to forget your name. So this pasuk will remind you of your name. So this young girl says, come on. I have to say this pasuk 3 times a day, because for some reason I'm going to forget my name, and this pasuk is going to remind me of my name. I forget the pasuk also. What's the? So I told her. I think that the pshat is like this: that there's a person, and then there's a person's name, and let's talk about a name: George, John, Judy, Susan. Let's talk about a name. I have a shem tov of being about tzedakah, or I have a shem tov of being a Talmud Chacham, or a good person, and a Baal Derech Eretz. Okay, you have a shem tov, but are you really a Talmud Chacham? Are you really about tzedakah? Well, so the Gemara says, the Gemara you just referred to, the Gemara says, Olam hafach harisi. What did you see when you died? The Gemara says, Olam hafach harisi. Everything's upside down. El yoinim lamata, matachtoinim lamala. Sometimes you could have a shame here, and it doesn't represent my essence at all. So what happens? You come to the Shemayim. This is what I told this girl. You come to the Shemayim, and they say, what is your name? And you say, I forgot. Why? Because there's such a pa'er. There's such a gap between the Olam HaEmes, who I really am, and the name that everybody called me. It's wide. You could drive a truck through there. This is a wide gap. So now the job at the pearly gates is to be Makarev the gates, to be Makarev the Tzadim over here. Meaning, are you who? This is the question. Are you who you represented yourself to be? That's the question, and that's a question that makes sense in the Olam HaEmes. And the way that question is worded is, what is your name?
In the pasuk?
So the pasuk is a pasuk which mina shomayim, and a person should choose their pasuk carefully, because not every pasuk starts like this, ends like this, and it says an art scroll is correct. The pasuk, the poskim say that the two talk about it, say that it has to be something which represents you, and something which is a tefillah, something you're yearning for. I have a good pasuk, by the way. Yaakov is Yancha Hashem b'yom sari sagev Hashem alekei Yaakov. So okay, I could be mispointed in that pasuk and see what I'm not, see what I am, like it's and see what I'm praying for, because you are who you pray for, you are what you pray for. So let me just finish the Nakuda here. I asked the Chafetz Chaim's son why he didn't put this in the halacha. So the Chafetz Chaim says because it's already in the Ber Heitev. So, so he says. So the son asked the Chafetz Chaim that you say a lot of things that say in the Ber Heitev. So he says no, only halacha, not midas chasidus. So he has this interesting conversation. So he asked the Chafetz Chaim, but you say a lot of midas chasidus in the Mishnah Berurah that it says in the Ber Heitev. So he said, I got to leave something for the Ber Heitev. As the Chavetz Chaim says, that's why this is the famous thing that the Chavetz Chaim left in the Tzava, that every Mishnah Berurah has to be printed with the Ber Heitev and the Shaar Tshuva together. So the son asked him, like, Taka, why do you need the Ber Heitev and the Shaar Tshuva? It's a Mishnah Berurah. So sefer Aruch HaShulchan doesn't have the Ber Heitev. Why do you need the Ber Heitev? So just have the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah. So the Chavetz Chaim told them that ad kedei kach, I should take the whole Shulchan Aruch for myself. I can't do that. Like, avek ganven in the ganze Shulchan Aruch kenach. That's what he says. Like, there's a Ber Heitev, Klal Yisrael learns the Ber Heitev, Klal Yisrael learns the Shaar Tshuva, and only the Mishnah Berurah. But he considered a gaiva to take away the Ber Heitev Mishnah Berurah. Anyways, let's stop a bit of trivia about the Indian of the shame. But I'll go on what I'm trying to say. There's Li and there's Lishmi, and that comes together b'Yom Hadin. By the way, the Yom Hadin doesn't have to be Achar Me'av Esrei. The Yom Hadin could be Rosh Hashanah also. There has to be a Li and there has to be a Lishmi, and in Yonenu there has to be a Chol Masecha Yiyu L'Shem Shamayim, but also B'chol D'rachecha De'ehu. You can do everything L'Shem Shamayim, but I'm separated from that thing. So it's the ultimate in Hiskashrus to be miskasher the Li with the Lishmi. That's the ultimate kasher that has to take place. That's the ultimate, the essence of life is to be miskari of the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama. So if you talk, I will end with if you talk about three lashonos in the Gemara. Kol anena min ha'olam hazeh b'lei bracha ma'al. So a ma'al is something that I do. Whereas here is a ruach that's coming down from Shemayim into this apple. And I'm ma'al, I'm separating it. I'm ma'al, I'm diverting the energy, like the egel hazav. Everything that's good. V'yatza ha'egel. That's one thing, ma'al, that's me'ilah. Nana Mikatche Shemayim is a whole different concept. Nana Mikatche Shemayim teaches us, no. That this apple is already Kodesh. And if you're not using it for Kodesh, in other words, this is a Chefza Shel Kedusha. It's not just that you should have channeled it. Hashem channeled it. It's already a Chefza Shel Kedusha. So if you're eating from Olam Hazeh, you see what is the bracha? The bracha, remember this, is Mekasher, the Olam Ha'asiyah to the Shemayim. So if I'm saying that it's Kilu Nena Mikatche Shemayim, what I'm saying is it's a hektish already. I'm not diverting it. I'm not moving. I'm not changing the going. It's Kadshe Shemayim. Now you're taking it for yourself. You're being mechal the hektish. It's a whole different idea because it's atzmiya shel kedusha. Al derech, not just lishmi but li. B'chol d'rachecha de'ehu einoid milvadoi. This is gufa Kadshe Shemayim. And then comes the Gemara and says, and then there's something else which is maybe kollel everything. And that is your goizel, listen to the lashon, mikutche brichu umikneses Yisrael. Knesses Yisrael is the Shechina. Kutche brichu shchinte. Kutche brichu shchinte, your goizel, mikutche brichu shchinte, Hashem made a world here. So if you made a world, and now you're taking the world in your mashchis, you're taking something. Here's Hashem made a world, He made a person, He made food, He made hana in this world. There's all kinds of hana in this world. There's a whole Gan Eden full of hana. So what you're doing when you're taking something without a bracha, when you're not makasher it lamala, you're goizel. The whole world, you're taking something away from the world. Not only is it me'ilah, and not only is it kadshay shemayim, but you're actually taking it, and you're taking kadshay shemayim, and you're eating it for yourself. You're taking it for yourself without, you're losing the whole hiskashrus. And ladati, it's too difficult to go in when I'm 5 minutes over, but this is the Indian of nefesh, ruach, neshama, exactly. The three lashonos are the issue of nefesh, ruach, neshama. Where is the kedusha? Where's life? Is it in the neshama? Is it in the ruach? Is it in the nefesh? And so this is the three lashonos. Advarim Amukim. I'll try to go further with it.
Sarah Cooks.